anthem. I believe so. And so I'm going to ask that we get involved in the anthem. Now, I know that we have the Zimbabwe national anthem, but today we've chosen to go with an anthem that we have celebrated not just as Zimbabwe, but as Africans. And it's an anthem, I believe, that we cherished at the time that we had it. It's called Ishe Komborera. And so I'm going to hand over to our technical team to lead us through and if you want to sing along to this national anthem, please feel free to go ahead and do so.
To prayer and intercession. This is a call to worship the living God. This is the release of the sound of heaven. Father, shift the atmosphere. Release the Holy Spirit in the atmosphere of Africa. Father, we call on the heavens. We call on heaven right now to send the rains of revival, to refresh and to rebuild. Father, we cry from the depths of our hearts and we say, Holy Spirit, have your way. We have treated you as an Eve, but you are a person. We love you, Holy Spirit, and we invite you. You are welcome in Africa. You are welcome in Zimbabwe, in every facet of Zimbabwe. This is our cry. Ishe Komborera Zimbabwe, Gaisibutirwe Zitarayo, Inzwa imitero Yeru, Ishe Komborera Isu Muriayo Kosisigelela Africa. Oh yes. It's why we yes, Kosi, Sigelela, Tina. Yes, so, Father, we cry with arms open wide in worship and adoration to you, the King, who's above all kings, the Lord who's above all lords. You gave us a promise, the promise of the Holy Spirit, that I shall send a comforter, I shall send a helper, I shall send a counselor, a healer who will heal the nation of trauma, physical trauma, spiritual trauma, emotional trauma. So, Father, we cry. We need to bless you, Father. Zimbabwe. Let revival flow over the city of Harare. Let the revival flow over Zimbabwe. Father, from the streets of Bamako, Mali, to the streets of Yaoundé, Cameroon. Father, from Lagos, Nigeria. Father, to Nairobi, Kenya. Let revival flow from Cape Town to Cairo. May the flow of the Spirit spread over this continent, bringing healing, Father, to even Francophone Africa, bringing healing to Arab Africa, bringing healing to East Africa, bringing healing to Southern Africa. Let revival flow, Father. We cry out to you, for you have said, I'm doing a new thing. Do you not see it spring up? Do you not see it come up? Even when you pass through the waters, they will not sweep over you. When you go through the fire, it shall not burn you. Father, new beginnings. Let new beginnings come. Oh, creative power of God. Oh, creative power of God. Oh, creative power of God. Oh, breath of heaven. Oh, breath of heaven. Breathe on us new life. Breathe on us new beginnings. A new season. A new season. Zimbabwe shall rise. Is rising. Being rebuilt. Being renewed. And being restored. Come, Holy Spirit.
Thanks to Pastor G for that moving anthem. And sisuka edimbamiwa siqonde emaphisa sonke sizizalwane zeZimbabwe. Sisuke ebulilima siqonde emzarabani sonke sizizalwane zeZimbabwe. Mfuna ukukhuluma kancane lokuthi ngomnyaka oyedluleyo ngesikhathi se-COVID-19 kube lokuhamba kudingwa imbiko yabantu ukuthi bacabangani ngokuguqulwa kwesekelo sombuso. Esikwaziyo ukuthi abantu balile ukuthi isekelo lesi siguqulwe. Asazi ke ukuthi okwenzakale mhla ka-20 April bakuthethe ngaphi. Into ebuhlungu kakhulu libe lilanga elibuhlungu ukuthi sikhangele izinto ezinjalo zisenzakala. Pastor G was actually saying that what you believe in defines you. And I come before you to say, I believe in the Zimbabwean constitution as I voted for it in the referendum in March 2013. Over to you, Pastor E.
Thanks very much, Justina, for that, and thank you again to Pastor G for that particular song. But also, you know, just for us to affirm why we do what we do. And I think this is part of what Justina is talking about, and part of what we are here today. If you're just joining us today, we've gathered from across the country, Zimbabwe, from across the world, to register our displeasure, our disapproval, and to register our presence to say no to this kind of destruction of the future, this kind of dismantling of democracy in Zimbabwe. We value our future, we value our young people, we value our nation, we value our dignity, we value our democracy too much for it to be squashed whilst we watch. Taungana kana mchango shikao pano, taungana kubva kumativi mana enyika nekubva kunze kwenyika yeZimbabwe, kuti tirambe zvinhu zviri kuitwa kune bumbiro remutemo redu reZimbabwe, nekuti kumbunyikidzwa kumbunyikidzwa kwebumbiro remutemo iroro, kumbunyikidzwa kweramangwana redu, kumbunyikidzwa kweupenyu hwevana vedu, kumbunyikidzwa zvakarwirwa nevakaenda kuhondo kuti Zimbabwe ive iri nyika yakasununguka ine kuzvitonga, nyika inobudirira. Ndosaka taungana pano. Regai tifambire mberi nechirongwa chedu. We're going to move ahead with our program here today, and I'm going to invite Dr. Musa Kika to come on and be our first speaker and speak just for not more than 5 minutes about why this amendment is so bad for us. Why are these amendments that have happened right now, why are they bad for us? And so I want us to listen attentively to Dr. Musa Kika, and then as soon as Doc is done, we then move on to the next program, and it's just going to be not more than 5 minutes for this talk. Doc, if you are there, I'm going to ask you to unmute and to go ahead and begin to speak.
Pastor E, thank you so much. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Great, wonderful. I am just going to speak to 5 points, 5 issues that I think are important to kick us off in our conversation this evening. We have our constitution, which is being mutilated, which is being amended. The 2 houses of parliament have voted in favor. Now it waits for presidential signature before it becomes law. But why is it that we are saying this process is so bad, that amending our constitution at this stage and in the manner in which it is being done is so bad? And I want to raise 5 things. The first is that indeed constitutions can be amended, but is this the right time? Is this the right thing we are doing? And I want to start by quoting what Thomas Jefferson says about this issue of amending the constitution. And I quote, he says, "I am not an advocate for frequent changes in laws and constitutions, but laws and institutions must go hand in hand with the progress of the human mind. As that becomes more developed, more enlightened, as new discoveries are made, new truths discovered, and manners and opinions change, with the change of circumstances, institutions must advance also to keep pace with the times. We might as well require men to wear still the coat which fitted him when a boy, a civilized society, to remain under the same regimen of their barbarous ancestors." But amendments must not be frequent, Pastor E. The same Thomas Jefferson had this to say, and I open quote, "I think moderate imperfections had better be borne with, because when once known, we accommodate ourselves to them and find practical means of correcting their ill effects." Close quote. Now, barring insincerity and political expediency, there is no way Zimbabwe would be needing over 20 amendments to a constitution that is 8 years old today. It can only be insincerity when we negotiated that constitution. It can only be political expediency that can lead us to say we need over 20 amendments to this day. And it's not only 20, remember, this is Amendment Bill number 2. We had Amendment Bill number 1. So constitutions cannot be just changed like one is changing codes of conduct of a burial society, for instance. And any form of change to a constitution, which is the supreme law, must be to improve or to better what we have, not to cut back. But these amendments are taking us literally back to where we were before 2013, and this is tragic. Number 2, these amendments are being driven to erode checks and balances. And now checks and balances, separation of powers, is at the very core of our system of government. We call it the trias politica system. The 3 branches of government, executive, the legislature, and the judiciary, working together, providing a check on each other. So what we are doing here is we are mutilating our very system of governance from all recognition. It is something that is alien to our very system of governance. What it does is that it leads to unchecked and unbridled power. This is how governments of the ancient times used to work. Surely we can't aspire to that in 2021. Now, in progressive societies, the kind of amendments that are being proposed here would be what would be termed unconstitutional constitutional amendments. That is to say, amendments which do not accord to the tenor and to the spirit of the Constitution as a whole. And what is the spirit and tenor of our Constitution? These are the founding values of the Constitution and of our society. And you find this in Section 3 of our Constitution. Among those is separation of powers. It is the very engine of our system of governance, and that is now under attack. And this is tragic. The third point that I'm going to raise is that in this bill, we have amendments that are seemingly targeting individuals. Now, how can you change an entire nation's supreme law to accommodate one person or certain persons? Because you want them to be there to have certain powers at a particular point in time. It can only be for political expediency. Now, constitutions are meant to be for posterity. They are for our future. They are for Zimbabweans who will be there after us 10 years, 20 years from now. But now we are mutilating to serve political purposes of today because we want certain individuals to be there. That is unfortunate. That is very tragic. We believed that the politics of personalities was something we had dropped prior to 2013. Unfortunately, it's manifesting in these amendments, and this is tragic. The point number 4 that I'm going to raise is that this bill is a monumental disregard of the wishes of the people. Now, people have expressed themselves in numerous ways, in numerous platforms, at numerous times against these amendments. When in July 2020, the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee went across the country to canvass for opinion, people risked COVID-19, they risked lockdown, they went out and they spoke decisively against these amendments. That report is there in Parliament today, showing what the people said, and the people said no to these amendments. But we saw the same Parliament going on to vote for these amendments, and that is an anti-people move. Now, people are the stockholders of power. People own, the Constitution. It starts by saying we, the people. It's our social contract setting out how we want to be governed. But now when you have a few people going on to change without the people participating, I think that is a classic case of the people's agenda being hijacked. The Constitution has been hijacked. The people's agenda has been hijacked. You cannot go and amend unilaterally a contract without the parties to the contract, the real parties to the contract participating, more so when you are purporting to be representing the parties to the contract. So our governors, our leaders are supposed to be representing the people who are the stockholders. How do you go and change the Constitution without the people's participation when the people are saying, no, don't do it? So this is tragic. And the final point I will raise is that in 2013, when we passed this Constitution, we took some giant leaps, giant steps forward. What we are doing now is to take giant steps backwards. And what it does is to expose that our leaders who are in government today, who were part of that negotiating process in 2013 and before that, they were not sincere. They were probably doing it for political survival at that point. They were probably doing it for whatever reasons, but certainly they are not national interest. Because at the earliest of opportunities, we are now seeing those very leaders going to work against these amendments. And it's extremely disheartening because some of the individuals who fought so hard to push this agenda are now working so hard to undo it. It can't be about the people. So I think at this stage, we can begin to talk of 2013 as a possible false start. Perhaps what happened in 2013 is not exactly what it seemed to be. Perhaps that wasn't our turning moment for the better. So I will end by saying, it seems we are back in the constitutional struggle. We thought we had surpassed this. We were now fighting other things, but we are back to where we were before 2013. And I'll stop there. Thank you so much, Pastor.
Wow. I mean, that is such a concise and accurate picture of what is happening. If you're just joining us, before I hand over to Justina Mkoko to give us some more information. We are here to refuse and to resist dictatorship in the form of the amending of a constitution, a beautiful constitution that we had that was put together in 2013 by the entire nation. Nyika Yese felt this was a beautiful constitution. And one of the key points that has been mentioned by Dr. Kika Nasi is that today, some of the people that were involved in building this constitution are the same people involved in dismantling it. Vamwe vanhu vakanga varipo tichivaka constitution inoyi ndo vamwe chete varipo vari kubatsira kuti iurawe. And izvozvo ndo zvinhu zvatiri kuramba zvinorwadza vadikani, zvinhu zvinoshungurudza mwoyo kuti chokwadi zvatingaita nyika yedu here isusu pachedu. Saka ndinotenda zvikuru. I thank you so much, Dr. Kika, for those words. And as we move on, I'm going to ask my sister Justina to come in and just give us a little bit more information and communicate with the rest of our attendees who are here today.
Thank you, Pastor E, and thank you, Dr. Kika. He says unconstitutional constitutional amendments. Nxa usanda ukusithinta hlangana lapha ngodaba lwesisekelo sombuso. Silodubo esibhekane lalo ukuthi silakho ukulahlekelwa ngezinto ebesicabanga ukuthi ingxenye sesisaziqeda. Indubo ezilethwa yikuthi isekelo sombuso sesifuna ukuthi siguqulwe. Thina njengamaZimbabwe sithi hatshi asifuni ukuthi isekelo sombuso leso siguqulwe. Siyaqhubekela phambili, and at this time I'm going to ask members of civil society to come and give us messages, and I'm going to begin with Rosalind Hanzi, who is the Executive Director of the Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights. Rose, are you in the house?
Thank you, Justina. I will be representing Rosalind Hanzi. My name is Paidamoyo Saurombe from the Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Pastor Ivan and Dr. Kika for the powerful startup. First of all, we would like to say as Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights, when the 2013 Constitution came into place, it was a beacon of hope. It gave citizens so much hope of where we were going to as a country and as a nation. And in the words of Abraham Lincoln, which we usually use when we describe democracy, as we talk about constitutions being for the people and by the people, that is the kind of hope that as a country we had, that there had been a people-driven constitution. What we then expected after the 2013 constitution was that there was going to be alignment of laws in Zimbabwe so that all our laws become aligned to the constitution. But that hope has since faded, as we are seeing the very document that was created for the people and by the people being put into shreds only by a few number of people. And what's also even more sad is that the small number of people have decided to go through this process through a number of illegalities that we have noted. It is quite a sad path that we have begun to tread in as a nation. And instead of strengthening our institutions, we have decided to strengthen individuals, which is a very sad path for the country. And as Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights, we are saying the process in which we have taken as a country, it has taken us back to the pre-2013 era, but instead it has also even taken us even back to the eras where the 2008 eras, I think you really know what was happening. It has taken us even far much back to the pre-2000 eras, whereby we had a total disregard of laws, a total disregard of our institutions. So as we go forward as a country, as we go forward as a nation, and as Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights, we are saying, let us strengthen our institutions and let us have active participations. Zimbabweans need to know that representatives should work for them, and representatives should do whatever they do for the people of Zimbabwe, not for just a limited number of people or for a minority. Hence, we are saying the constitutional amendments that have started needs to be revised, and we need to take all active measures, including continuously going to the courts to test whatever is being done with this constitution. This is a document of promise, a social contract between Zimbabweans and its own people. And this constitution and this contract which Zimbabweans have with its own people cannot simply be shredded into pieces to strengthen individuals. Hence, we stand in solidarity with the people of Zimbabwe and saying that we need a strong constitution that protects and gives each and every one of us a guarantee to constitutionalism. I thank you all.
Wow. Thank you so much, Paidamoyo Saurombe, for that impassioned presentation. You know, my sister Justina, and I really felt what he was saying. Vendanzwa kunyara on behalf of my representatives, vatakatuma. Vanhu vatakatuma kuenda kuparliament kuti endai munotidefenda, endai munotimiririra. Ndo vanhu vari kubatsira kuti munhu umwe chete, one person, ave akabata nyika mumaoko make. Ndanzwa kunyara kushoda kuti ndo zvavakaita. And we're here to say to our members of parliament as well that, look, the people will not take this sitting down. I just wanted to get that in there, Sister Justina.
And I think it's very important for us to recognize that people are now saying we have regressed even beyond 2013. This is 2021. How can we be going back as a nation? I think we need to be able to stand up as Zimbabweans and say no to constitutional amendments that are being proposed. Over to you, Pastor E.
Next up, we have with us a man that I have a lot of respect for. Uyu murume wanda kuchingamidza kuti auye munhu wandinotarisa ndichiona basa ravanoita ravanobata. These are men and women that are involved in defending the rights of the workers, and their work stretches in Zimbabwe back into the history of our fight for equality in terms of income, in terms of rights for workers, and in terms of just fighting for the democratic space. And of course, this is the Zimbabwe Congress of Trade Unions. I want to invite to come and give us his address today and his solidarity speech for the next 2 minutes. I want to invite my good comrade, Peter Mutasa, as he comes through. He's the president of the Zimbabwe Congress of Trade Unions, to give us his remarks. Mkoma Peter, if you're here, I ask you to come to the stage now.
Long time, Pastor Ivan, and thank you for inviting me and for that flattery introduction. I appreciate.
Well, as you carry on, Peter and I spent many months together, first of all in prison, and then of course many months together going to the courts, being tried for crimes. And I think this, for you and me, this is a reality, because we start to see, if one person owns the court system, the judiciary, as what this amendment bill is going to do, you and I would spend countless months in prison. But I'm glad you are here and that you continue to stand and to fight without fear. Mkoma Peter, we respect and salute you. But please go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much. And I see there are many comrades here who have been fighting and who continue to fight and who do so better than some of us. And I appreciate everyone who is here. And thank you, Comrade Ivan, for inviting me. So on behalf of the working class, I wish to appreciate the organizers of this rally on this important topic at a time we are facing difficult challenges. We acknowledge as workers the importance of this matter, and we will support all initiatives aimed at resisting the dictatorship. Whoever is resisting the dictatorship, we are together. Our view is that we do not have a new constitutional crisis per se, but we never had constitutionalism in this country. It is an issue of the extremes that the regime has gone to that we are facing now. But the truth of the matter is we never had constitutionalism, and we would want us to approach it through those lenses. It is therefore important to analyze properly what is happening The regime is throwing many things around, and we are forced to be reactive and run around everywhere. And if we are not careful, we also may run around aimlessly at times, although every effort towards resisting the dictatorship is appreciated. In that, we then lose a coordinated approach and response to the main issues and the main objective. So in our view, as workers, we face two main problems. The first one is repression. We are feeling repression everywhere, politically, economically, and socially. The second one is neoliberalism-induced poverty or misery. There's misery out there. Whatever the regime is doing in amending the constitution, the brutality, lawfare, etc., is ultimately for economic gains of the elites and their cronies. It is aimed for primitive accumulation. We have witnessed the massive unfair transfer of wealth from the poor, working class, the peasants, the students, to the rich elites and their cronies. We therefore need to address both in all our engagements and approaches. For this, we call for a second national working people's convention. We need to strategically and collectively organize ourselves. We are not organized currently, we are fragmented. Secondly, we need to define the agenda. We need a collective agenda that goes beyond one issue that is thrown today and another issue thrown tomorrow. We need to fight repression and neoliberalism induced poverty. And thirdly, we need to mobilize for action, for action. And our action, fourthly, must be persistent and consistent, non-violent civil resistance. So we have a rich history of fighting against repression and neoliberalism misery in this country. We collectively fought for this constitution that is now being mutilated. Our main strength was in basing our struggle on grassroots movements and not individuals. Comrade Ivan, we are going to die. So individual may die, they can get tired or retire from the movements and from the struggle itself. So it is our hope that the deliberations today will take us back to learn from the past heroic fight back against the brutal dictatorship of Robert Mugabe, and then adapt the new normal. We have got new things that have come. COVID has brought many things. So we need to adapt, but we have got critical lessons that we need to learn from the heroic fight, our NCAs, our crisis coalitions, our NGO forum, our ZimRise. Those institutions have got a repository of very important knowledge and wisdom and experience that have been gained for a long time. So the battle will not be won without a collective approach that is based on the grassroots. We are here today. There are people in Mzarabani, there are people in Nyauhukwe, there are people in Nyanga, there are people in Gwanda who do not even know that their constitution has been amended. So we need to go back to the basics. So we wish you fruitful, we wish ourselves, all Zimbabweans everywhere, fruitful deliberations. Aluta continue, comrades, Shinga Mshandi Shinga, Tina Sebenzi Tina. Thank you very much.
Wow.
Comrade Tamtasa, thank you so much for that appeal. And also just to remind us that we need to be a collective and not throw in bits and pieces here and there. We need to be focused as a civil society. And the next person on the list, it was supposed to be Wellington Bofana, but his battery died a few minutes ago. And now I'm going to invite Mr. Rashid Mahia, who is the director of Yield Zimbabwe and also the chairperson of Crisis in Zimbabwe Coalition. Rashid, are you in the house?
Yes, I am, and thank you. Thank you, Justina, and thank you, Mfondo Zivan, and thank you to the organizers for this important event where we take stock and speak out as citizens of this country. We have put a lot of our effort from years back to have a democratic constitution in this country. And we feel greatly shortchanged by what happened in the past 2 days. I'm representing the Crisis Zimbabwe Coalition and also the Youth Zimbabwe, and what has happened with the changing of the constitution is clear evidence that there's a crisis in this country. The crisis emanates from the fact that we have got a group of Zimbabweans who, after having fought colonialism, decided to be the personification of what they fought. And there is a preoccupation with power and not with intention to transform this country called Zimbabwe into what we seek and dream Zimbabwe to be. So the amendment number 2 is one major challenge that we have with it. The fact that amendment number 2 puts all the powers in the executive, in the office of the president. Comrades that have fought for a democratic constitution in Zimbabwe will realize and insist that one of the major fights, and even where one of the major fights was that we need power to be decentralized. We don't want power to be in one office. We believe in power being in all arms of the state. But the amendment number 2 has given all the powers in the office of the president. We now have a king instead of a president. And that is where our problem is. We have comrades that are in prison, people that have been charged with many crimes that are political. They need to have confidence that the judiciary will dispense its duties in a fair manner. So you want to believe that the judiciary will perform their duty without fear or favor, without the fear that the judges' terms of office might not be extended because their judgments are not in compliance with the executive or with what the president believes in. So we're talking about separation of powers. We're going to have elections in Zimbabwe, and petitions are going to be taken to the Constitutional Court, to the courts where the president has the powers to increase the terms of office without the judges going through an interview. But this was all taken care of in the Constitution of 2013. So we have gone further, we've gone back to the period beyond 2013. So that is our greatest challenge. Constitution Amendment number 2 seeks to take us back. But not only that, it takes away the powers of the citizens, the responsibilities of the citizens, which they have bestowed in the elected representatives. There is betrayal by the elected representatives, because you find elected representatives in parliament deciding to take away even their own power as parliamentarians to provide oversight over the executive and decide to give it to the executive. So from a crisis coalition point of view, we have a crisis of governance. And this crisis has been further worsened by the fact that the powers of the citizens to provide oversight over the executive have been taken away and have been taken back. The judiciary's independence is going to be compromised because all the powers to appoint have been given to the executive. There is little separation of powers in as far as we are concerned. And this compromises the dispensation, this compromises people's access to justice. This compromises people's access to their parliamentarians. And in as far as we're concerned, we are way back. But what do? We need to act, and thank you for the organizers. We need to act. We talk and we act. They do this because they know we will talk and talk and talk and not act. So my challenge is, after we talk, let's act. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much to my brother, my fellow comrade, Rashid Mahia, a very brave cadre who backs up his words with actions. This man, Rashid is talking about, we need to act. And that is so important, that as we gather like this is our first action of gathering in solidarity, identifying each other, but uniting our voices. And then we must take it forward. And there are some actions that we are going to speak about. In fact, you'll hear from Zikamai Bere from Zim Rights, who's the main organizer, the main organization behind this, to come and tell us a little bit later on about some of the actions that are going to be taking place. But thank you so much for those words, Koma Rashid, for coming out and standing with us in your capacity as chairman of Crisis in Zimbabwe Coalition and in your capacity as director for Heal Zimbabwe. I mean, those are such apt names: Crisis in Zimbabwe Coalition and Heal Zimbabwe. Both those things speak.
You are on mute, Pastor E.
I'm so sorry. I didn't realize I was in mute all along. But thank you again to my brother Rashid Mahia for those wonderful words. A man who backs up his words with actions. Rashid Mahia has been, of course, as some of you may know, arrested by the regime and thrown in jail for speaking truth to power, for seeking the changes in our nation. And as he said today, key words that he spoke about today, he says we need confidence that the judiciary will perform its work without fear and without favor. Munhu anenge asungwa kana kuti anenge apomerwa mhosva anofanira kuziva kuti izvo hapana chekutya, kuti izvo vatongi kana kuti matare akapambwa nevanotonga nyika, naika nekuti hazvifaniri kunge zvakadaro. So I want to thank Mkoma Rashid for those wonderful words, and thank you for representing Crisis in Zimbabwe Coalition and for representing Heal Zimbabwe as well. We're going to move on with our rally, and we're picking up momentum. I can see that we are probably, we're about 642, maybe 650 almost participants. If you know anyone who wants to attend this, let's bring them in, to attend. I want to invite a fellow comrade in the field of ministry, but also in the field of wanting transparency, wanting justice, wanting peace in our nation, to come and speak with us. And this is a man who is leading the Zimbabwe Council of Churches. He's not a stranger to voicing and speaking truth to power. I want to welcome Reverend Kenneth Mtata to come and speak and give us a few words here today. Reverend Mtata, if you're in, I will now ask you to take the stage.
Unfortunately, I'm advised that he is not well, so he could not join us.
Right.
Yeah, but I think he is with us in spirit.
Not a problem.
And
not a
we
problem.
wish him a speedy recovery.
Thank you very much, Justina, for that. If you are just joining us, I want to ask you not to leave. Musabve pano, because zvatiri kuita zviri kuoneka and zviri kunzwika. Tiri kutaura isusu kuti izvo kumbunyikidzwa kuri kuitwa nyika yedu nekuburikidza pakuchinjwa kuri kuitwa bumbiro remutemo hatisi kukuda. Sevanhu vanoshanda, sevanhu vanoda nyika yavo, sevanhu vanoda kugara munyika mavo, hatisi kuda zvaitwa nehurumende yedu kana zviri kuitwa vachibatsirwa neparliament. Mufunge isusu sevanhu vakasarudza vanhu vari muparliament tiri kuti izvo musati kuvadze, musati uraye, musati mbunyikidze. Hatisi kuda kuti izvo nyika yedu itongwe nemunhu mumwe chete ane masimba, asina anotarisa, asingabvunzike, asingakwanisa kugariswa pasi neparliament, asingakwanisa kugariswa pasi nematare. Hatidi zvakadaro. Ndo zvatiri kuramba. My sister Justina, if you can just support that so that everyone else can hear.
Thank you very much, Pastor E. And this is the constitution we are about. And we are saying no to the amendments. And we are saying that we want strong institutions in this country. We want to resist dictatorship. Moving on, Pastor E, the next young woman I first encountered a few years ago at a meeting on national dialogue. She literally moved the house from the stage. My jaw dropped when I sat there and listened to this young woman who was articulate, who knew what she was talking about, and she has become an advocate against constitutional amendments. And It's none other than Namatai Kwekweza. Namatai, please speak to us for the next 5 minutes.
All right.
Namatai?
Am I audible? Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, no, that's absolutely wonderful. A very good evening to you all. It's a pleasure to be in this platform where we have brought together this amazing group of people to discuss an issue that I personally am very passionate about, and I know a lot of other people are passionate about. And the fact that we are now here together, that for me is something that is very, very amazing. And I hope that post this particular rally, we can continue to come together and resist dictatorship through the resistance of the constitutional amendments that are currently ongoing. So the first thing I would like to say in my presentation about why young people must rise up, why young people must become involved in this process, is to say that young people constitute the demographic majority. According to Zim stats, we are about 77.9% of young people who are under the age 35. And according to UNFPA, 62% of young people in Zimbabwe are under the age of 25. And we as the young people have the longest time to be governed under the Constitution. Our future is dependent on the Constitution, because basically the Constitution is us consenting to be governed in a way. It speaks to a standard by which us as Zimbabweans want to be treated for as long as that Constitution is in existence. And this is why I personally have not understood why the Constitution is being amended without any consent from the governed, because the public hearings, outcomes themselves, and this is something that was even documented by Parliament, the outcome was that people were saying no to the constitutional amendment, and yet this has gone on. These people are altering the standard by which Zimbabweans in 2013 agreed to be treated and to be governed. They are altering those standards without the consent, without having gone to the people, trying to have them understand and persuade them, because they knew if they had gone and embarked on a particular process, the people of this country would have said no because of the level of absurdity of those particular amendments. That having been said, I would like to say that we as a movement have to look at this in the context of what has been happening since these constitutional amendments were brought into play. We have to understand fully well that civil society, the opposition, was being buttressed left, right, and center under the disguise of the lockdown. The lockdown was taken advantage because they knew that civil society could not mobilize successfully. They knew that the opposition could not mobilize successfully because we were under the lockdown. So I think it's very important for us to understand that in as much as the constitutional amendment bill number 2 is now in its final stages, we still have an opportunity and a chance to echo our disgruntlement from whatever field we are from whatever walk of life we are from. We still have an opportunity for us to make a contribution, to echo our frustration, and to resist dictatorship through the enforcement of the Constitutional Amendment Bill 1 and Constitutional Amendment Bill number 2. We have that opportunity. And it is now up to us, even if you are a lawyer, even if you are a pastor, from whatever walk of life, even if you are a vendor or a teacher, a nurse or a doctor, from whatever walk of life, we have that opportunity, particularly as young people, to echo our disgruntlement and to advance an agenda of ensuring that the Constitutional Amendment Bill 1 and 2 are dealt with, and we cannot lose hope. So I just want to say that as young people, we must look at this in its full political light. We must be in a position where we view everything in the context that is absolutely appropriate. We must understand that we are dealing with an executive and a president who is consolidating power. We must understand that in light of the Constitutional Amendment 1 and 2, there was also the reintroduction of the National Youth Service, a violent militia group that will probably be beating up people from 2023 elections. And because we will go to the same courts where the president has all the power, there will never be justice. Because we will go to the same Human Rights Commission where the president has power over those people, there will never be justice for those who have been violated. This is why we are saying that we need a system of protection and balances, whereby the executive is accountable to the judiciary and the executive is accounted to the legislative arm of government. We need to think about the patriotic bill. We need to think about the political situation in this country. Honorable Joanna Mamombe, Cecilia Chemberi, they got out of jail after 61 days yesterday. We need to understand that Makomborero, a young person, was arrested, was charged, and was sentenced, and he is currently in jail. And these things are going to get worse as we see the regime bring forward these unconstitutional bills and imposing them on the people of this country. If we do not resist, if we do not come together and ensure that our voice is heard and our disgruntlement is heard, then we are in essence, becoming complacent, and we are aiding it. So we must be in a position where we understand that these are some of the steps. The Constitutional Amendment Bill 1 and 2 are some of the steps that are being taken for us to actually end up in leadership. So my final remark, what people can do, particularly what young people can do, because now that we understand everything in its full light, now that we understand that the rules of the game are being altered, are being changed without our consent, and yet we are the people who have the longest time governed under those rules. We are the people who have the longest time to be governed under the system that we did not agree to be governed under. We as young people must be at the forefront of resisting, the constitutional amendments, both Constitutional Amendment Bill number 1 and number 2. So what can we do? The first thing that we need to do as young people is to organize community actions. We need to go to those young people in the rural areas who, during the time when some of these discussions were being held during lockdown, did not have access to the internet, did not have access to Twitter or Facebook or WhatsApp or Instagram. We need to go to them and tell them, about what is happening with our constitution. We need to have a buy-in. And when we have that buy-in, we need to organize community actions to resist the constitutional amendment number 2. We need to write petitions. We need to write letters. We need to engage the Minister of Justice. We need to engage, the Portfolio Committee on Justice and parliamentarians. We need to call them. I'm sure the Election Resource Center was providing the numbers of all the senators and all the MPs. We need to keep engaging them, even though they have voted, so that we keep expressing our discontentment. At the end of the day, I will say this, that these people will always learn from our behavior how to treat us. And it's very important for them to always be reminded that we, the citizens, have power. And particularly when we come together and we unite, we can actually achieve what we actually want. So therefore, having said that, I just want to say that I believe in the power that young people have to make sure that this country becomes better and that all people are safe, secure, and well governed. And this can only happen if we have the courage. I will finish with a quote by Maya Angelou, who said that courage is the most important of all the virtues. Without courage, it is impossible to practice any other virtue with consistency. We need to understand as young people that when we embark on this process, some of us are going to be arrested, some of us are going to be beaten up, some of us are going to be abducted, but we need to have the courage to stand for what we believe in and to defend our future and to realize that in any kind of battle, in any kind of struggle, there is always a cost and there's always a price to be paid. And we have to be willing to pay the price. Over to you, Justina.
Thank you, Namatai. Kuthola kusasa labasakhulayo lisengcupheni. Vechidiki, hanzi ramangwana renyu harina kugadzikana zvakanaka tikaregera zviri kuitwa izvi zvichienderera mberi. Resist dictatorship. Over to you, Pastor E.
You know, Justina, I just have to get some of the energy that Namatai brings. If you were listening, if you were involved today and you were listening to what this young lady Namatai, and I think Namatai only turned 22 this year, and already Namatai launched a hashtag. I think she was the first person to launch a solo protest concerning the changes. And she actually went. It wasn't a protest just on social media. She was there at Parliament and she launched a protest together with a few friends to say no to constitutional amendments as they began a few months ago. And she was there and she was talking about why are these things not being represented to the people? Why are we not having the people speak respond into these things? And she was one of the first persons to sound the alarm. She was arrested for it and today she is facing a trial for this, for launching this campaign that says no to constitutional, amendments. And her words are very clear as a young person. She says a price must be paid. There is a price to be paid for defending things like this constitution. Namatai, we salute you, and we want to multiply the number of Namatais in our young people across the nation who are willing to stand up and say resist dictatorship. So thank you so much, Namatai, for those wonderful words. There's so many messages coming in. Keep your messages coming in. We can see those. I can see here Julie Barnes says, critical point, we need to spread the word out to the rural areas, to people who are not on social media, who don't have any money for data. I can see here Tenda Empire says, part of the strategy to move forward is to educate the grassroots that are not on Twitter or Facebook so they can understand what their vote and their voice means. There's so many messages, and I think we are all finding our voices, and we are starting to come up with what is a part of our united action. We're going to move on with our young people. The next batch of our young people have 2 minutes each to speak today and add their voices to resist dictatorship. Kuramba hujanyiriri, kuramba hubimbindoga kutungamirira nyika. I'm going to invite 3 young people to come onto the stage. I have Mantante Mlochwa. She's a wonderful young lady. I know that she has been at the forefront of many different campaigns, and she'll be the first one to add her voice here today as we stand together.
Thank you so much.
Resist democracy. Mantante, it's good to see you, Queeneth. God bless you.
Thank you so much, Pastor Ian. I think those are powerful words by Namatai. Totally affirm them. So it's a way of solidarity and just expressing my views and my reaction to the constitutional amendment bill, particularly what happened recently with Parliament, parliamentarians in the Senate actually voting positive for the amendment. I think I just wanted to react and say the process for me is a bit of a concern. And I think the reason why I want to focus so much on process is because this is the same process that's going to happen even with the patriotic bill. So if we don't look at the process problem right now, if we don't look at potentially the discrepancies in the way that this whole process was carried out, we might actually come back and sit down talking about a patriotic bill that would have been made effective later on. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was the issue of the cluster of, the proposed amendments. You find that there is like a whole list of amendments that are put together in one cluster. So what that does is that it doesn't allow flexibility for you to reject some of these things or accept some of those things, because at the end of the day, it's about saying yes or no to the entire bill. So the reason why I feel that this was more a strategic, this is a strategic approach from the side of government, potentially specifically ZANU-PF, because when we had a conversation with women yesterday, members of parliament that are female, they were talking about how there is a need to appreciate, for instance, the women's quota is something that women have, because if you take that away from women, you won't have something. So they're saying that they said yes to this amendment bill because they wanted to retain the 66 that women have while they're fighting for a 50-50. And while I have reservations and comments around that issue of the quota system for women, one thing I wanted to specifically speak on this is the fact that they are specifically picking out a clause in the entire amendment and saying, we're saying yes to this, but you're saying yes to an entire bill that contains so much changes that affects people. So I think the first point of call should have been the issue of parliamentarians actually contesting multiple levels of the entire bill. The second thing was the issue of the input from the public. You've discovered that last year in June, the government rolled out the consultation process in a COVID-19 situation where you find that in all of the places, we're expecting a maximum of 50 people to actually participate in those consultations. And I want to make reference to places like, for instance, Matabele and South. You find that they're provincial centers. The consultation is going to happen in Gwanda, for instance. So what that does is that you're expecting people from Beitbridge, Esekoti, and other surrounding places to actually input into this process in Gwanda when the regulations are saying people can't move between cities. So already that is an exclusive process. And because also there are 50 people, that means that it's likely that the locals are the ones that are going to make up this composition. So the process itself was very exclusive. And then the other thing I wanted to mention around the process also is that it borders on issues of representation, the quality of leaders that we have. Because if you look at the people that actually placed input into this process, people openly rejected this amendment bill. But you find that the parliamentarians and the Senate actually come in to endorse it. But these are the same people that are supposed to be the voice of the people. They are representatives of the people. So I feel like more than anything, it actually gives a reflection of the kind of the leaders that we have, leaders that don't listen to the people, leaders that don't actually reflect the interests of the people. It speaks even into the way that people are going to vote in the next election, to say, we need to actually sit down and ask ourselves, what kind of bills did my MP actually participate in? What kind of bills did my MP actually say yes to? Because that actually shows the level, of meaningful contribution that I'm doing towards the parliament, and then takes to the parliament. Then, as a way of closing as well, something that it's a huge problem for me in the clauses that are there, clause 11 again, the issue of the youth quota. You're told as young people, we're going to give you 10 seats as a way of making sure you're included in parliament, which is very problematic already, because the idea is when ZANU-PF gets 2/3 majority, they get 2/3 of those seats. If MTC gets 1/3 or whatever, so it's almost like the parties get the privilege or the jurisdiction to select those young people that make up the 10. Already that's problematic, because there might be a mandataire who's not in any political party but has the capacity and the interest to contribute to parliamentary processes. So already it forces young people to be in some of formal institutions, some form of political affiliation in order to actually qualify for this youth quota. Second thing also within that youth quota is the idea that there is no specific definition of who are these young people. We've got people living with disability, we've got members of very marginalized communities, in terms of, for instance, the Khoisan in Cholocho. Do we think about that to say, how do you ensure that people from those small communities that are not represented to actually come into this quota? So already, because we're identifying Cholocho, it means that this is one young person that could be in this. We're identifying persons with disability. That's already two people. So if you identify some of these young people, you discover that these 10 seats don't make sense. So combined, the youth quota and the women's quota don't make sense in a world or in a country where women in youth actually make up the demographic majority. So these are some of the things that we need to be thinking about as we go on to question and also to challenge this amendment bill, because the process itself is unconstitutional, because it doesn't take priority the interests of the people. It doesn't include the people that matter. The same energy that they put in pushing people to actually show up and vote in the referendum for this constitution is the same energy that they should have put in actually getting people to input into this. And the last thing they should have declassified to say there should be elements that people should be allowed to say yes to and not to, and those that we say no to actually don't fly, because when you say yes to an entire bill, I mean, you're giving us everything, and I think it's unfair.
Justina, the young people are the answer to the issues in Zimbabwe. I'm telling you right now, when I listen to Mantate, when I listen to Namatai, the energy, the focus, the preciseness, the ability to know exactly what they want and what they don't want is amazing. And I think this is where the key is. And I'm excited that there are many young people that are tuned in today and that will be tuned in the weeks and months to come, as these different campaigns pick up pace to say, resist dictatorship. Thank you, Mantate, for that clarity and for that preciseness. And I think particularly for helping us to understand where some of the problematic issues are that we may not be focusing on. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Mantate, for bringing out that sugar coating that we have seen, where women and the youths have been kind of put there as the cherry on top. But still, we are saying no to the constitutional amendments. And the next young person to speak to us is Fallen Lunga, a youth activist and a student. 2 minutes, Fallen. Are you in the house? Fallen?
If Fallen is not in, we can move on to Nancy. Is that okay for us to do,
yes,
Justina?
Yes, Nancy Njenge.
Okay.
Nancy.
No problem. We'll catch up with them a little bit later on, in our program. We've got some exciting things about to happen in the program. So we're going to move on. I know that at this point, we're now going to invite to speak representatives from the different women's organizations. And this is so key because this is part of what Mantate has spoken about today in terms of what some of the women MPs said concerning why they either voted yes or why they felt that they wanted to vote yes once they're in Parliament. So I want to, and I think Justina, maybe you may be the best to introduce this particular stage for us.
Thank you very much, Pastor E. And at this stage, I will introduce Zanele Nyati as a representative from women. Let's hear your views. Zanele.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much. Good evening, my colleagues. I'm Zanele Nyati. I'm representing women. It's a pleasure to be in this platform today, sharing on behalf of women on the Constitutional Amendment Bill number 2. Constitutional Amendment Bill number 2 is set to rob the citizens on democracy. It speaks against some of the statutory instruments that our own government is signatory to, that is human rights declarations. It is a matter of fact and public record that the new constitution was voted unanimously by the citizens of Zimbabwe, including us women and youth. Itself being a product of us youth, itself being a product of COPAC founded upon a principle that recognizes public consultations and citizens' participation in all processes. Amendment Bill is a caricature of the old Lancaster House Constitution, which we repealed. All the amendments which it brought about are retrogressive and returning the country's achievement back to dark years. Closure of the public interviews and judges' appointment process is disrespect to the modern Roman Dutch law and civil liberties, which calls citizen participants. The youth and women quotas are just a piecemeal and political gimmick. They do not promote effective youth and women participation, bearing in mind that you are still returning to the political party system which is breeding loyalists, only not promoting parliamentary democracy. Why that? Which is, we say, not to Constitutional Amendment number 2 bill. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Zanele, for that statement that you have just given us. 2 minutes, my sister.
Hello everyone. Inini Samaita Kaidza ndakamirira zimuraidzi ndiri kuno kugrassroots kwatinoti kumusha. Zvinorwadza chaizvo kuti tinzwe kuti constitution yakutoamendiwa. Isusu tiri kuno kumusha takatomirira kuzodzidziswa nezve constitution. Hatisati tatoziva kuti mukati macho zvatakapedza kuita contribution tichipa pfungwa dzedu. Hapana wakazodzoka kwatiri kutiyeukawo sevanhu kuti aiwa zviya zvatakataura zvakazobuda zvakadai. Nokudaro tiri kuti kwete kuamendwa kweconstitution nokuti isusu pachedu hatina zvatinoziva. Isusu tichitori kuno kumusha hatina kana kutomboona kopi yeconstitution, hatitoizivi, tinongowa zvitaurwa. Ende tikatarisazve tichingowa zvangova zvesocial media, ko avo vasingakwanisi kuinda pasocial media, vasina dzifoni, tohwa sei zviri kuitika munyika. Uye tiri kuona sokuti paitoita kumbunyikidzwa kwekodzero dzedu isusu sezvizvarwa zvomuZimbabwe, nokuti kana majaji onzi oapoindiwa nemunhu wanu, zvinoreva kuti tatokangamwa zviya zvatakatarisira kuti zvigadziriswe. Takapokana chaizvo panguva dzakapfuura panyaya dzezvematongerwo enyika nezvimwe zvakasiyana siyana. Takatanzwa kuti NPRC inouya kugiraundi. Zvino kana pakaita kuti majaji aapoindiwa avapo, ko zviya zvatachida kuti zvigadziriswe neNPRC zvichabudirira here? Ticharamba tichingori vanhu vokupokana, hapana kuti tichazogadzirisana. Isusu tiri kungoti hazviiti kuamenda constitution, ngavadzoke kwatiri isu. Chinhu choruzhinji ngachiitwe noruzhinji, chinongoda jekerere, nokuti apa pavano kutodzvanyirirana. Isusu tiri kuti aiwa maparliamentarians ngaayeuke kuti tisu takavaisa ipapo. Hatina kuvaudza kuti vandoti dzvanyirira, hatina kuvaudza kuti vandoti aiwa matare ngaasishaya basa. Ngavadzoke kwatiri isusu. Isu tiri kutoda kutodzidziswa nezveconstitution, kutotanga patsva, tizive zvirimo, tigoenda mberi. Otherwise taakutoita confusion, hatichazivi kuti zvizvi zvakutora nzvimbo. Tatenda.
Mashoko makukutu aya, I think manyatsokuvanzwa ndofunga Maita Kaidza vari kuhwereketa vari kumasvingo uko. Kwai naMaita Kaidza hatina kumbozviona takazongohwa kuti ndo zvadii zvaitwa. Maitakaidza nditenda zvikuru nemashoko enyu iwayo nekuti mataura pamongo chaipo chaipo pane nyaya chaiyo kuti vanhu havana kana kumbobvunzwa. Ende mashoko amantaura ekutoti vamwe havachatombozivi kuti constitution yacho yakamira sei. These are powerful words here spoken by Maita Kaidza, who is in Masvingo, and she is mourning the fact that the opportunity for ordinary people to speak into the amendments was taken away and was not there. We're going to move a little bit quicker so that we don't lose too many people. We've got some wonderful things that are taking
Pastor
place.
E, I'm advised that Fallon and Nancy are in the house.
Okay, so Fallon Dunga and Nancy Njenge are in the house. So before we move on to community voices, very quickly, Fallon Dunga and Nancy Njenge, I'm going to ask you to come onto the stage. You each have 2 minutes, exactly 2 minutes. I'll ask you to stick to those 2 minutes so that we can move on with the program. Fallon Dunga, go ahead and give us your solidarity message very quickly.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Fallon Dunga. I'm Fallon Dunga from Lupani State University. I'm a student activist and also a youth activist. I stand in solidarity in denouncing dictatorship in Zimbabwe and resist the undemocratic changes to the constitution. The 4th of May was indeed a sad day for Zimbabwe, where only 191 individuals in the name of MPs betrayed 3.3 million Zimbabweans by saying yes to the constitutional amendment. It is very sad. It's actually a threat to a democracy. Personally, I feel like our country is now one step further along the road to a totalitarian state. And as young people, we have to wake up from this deep slander. It's high time for us to say enough is enough. The war system must fall. Resist dictatorship. We must resist this dictatorship for the betterment of our country, for the betterment of our future as young people. I say thank you for that. My only 2 minutes, I think, is enough. Thank you.
Powerful, powerful words from this young lady, Fallon Dunga, who is at Lupane State University, all the way in Lupane. Thank you so much, Fallon, for its wonderful words. Nancy Njenge, let me hear from you.
Nancy?
You might be on mute, Nancy. All right, when she does come back, just let us know, Justina, and we'll bring her back onto the stage today. If you were listening to Fallon, again, you can hear our young people. These young people are ready to resist dictatorship because they know this is about their future. I want to invite 2 participants who are with us here today. One is a man who is not a stranger to the struggle. He's a teacher. I know that he's part of the Association of Rural Teachers Union of Zimbabwe and is part of the community as a teacher in our rural areas. I want to invite Robson Chere who is in Acturas. And then after that, I'm going to invite Promise Sunday, who is actually in the United States, all the way in the United States, and is going to come after Robson has spoken. So Robo, Mkoma Robo, wherever you are, this is it. Pindai Mkoma, Kandai Inzwe Tinzwe. You might be on mute, Robo, if you're here. I don't hear anything as yet. So just try again. But as you are trying, Nkoma Robo, let me then move over to Promise Sunday. Promise Sunday, come on in and give us your words.
I'm advised that Promise is not here, but we have Chenai Mtambaseri.
Okay. Chenai?
Hello, good evening, everybody. Thank you, Justina and Pastor E. And thank you for the organizers of this platform. It's a really good opportunity, a historic moment indeed, when we can all kind of cry out together. And I truly hope that we continue to be able to do that. I think In the 2 minutes I've got, I would like to raise or highlight or appeal in 3 ways. So as we are learning this evening, and as we've heard, the changes in the Constitution, the impact that they will have will not discriminate. This will affect everyone. And if there should be a silver lining out of this, is the fact that we should all cry out together, because hapana asiri impactwa. We will not have investors come into a country where the legislators do not respect the Constitution. So whether you're a business person, whether you're an unemployed young person, whether you're somebody sort of living in the rural areas, wherever you are, whomever you are going to be affected. You have to take the time to listen. You have to take the time and the effort to understand what has happened, how it has happened, and why you should be bothered. So I really want to make a huge appeal to all of us. This is not the time for you to say this one Pastor E, or this is about the activists like Namatai. We should all be bothered by this. I mean, it's a huge embarrassment to begin with that this should happen in our watch whilst we are awake and listening and observing. So we really need to do everything that we can to turn back the hands of time to that moment when we voted, and we all, I happened to be in Zimbabwe at the time when everybody voted for the Constitution. So, we really need to personalize this struggle, see how you have been impacted personally. Secondly, I want to say that we should not allow those that undermine our democracy to this extent to find peace whilst we are still alive and able to do something. They must hear our cries wherever we are, wherever they are, wherever we go. Do what you can. We've got, at the moment, we do have some really important voices, like I've just heard Namatai on the call, and different people that are speaking out. Let's join them. Let's augment that voice. Let's all of us together say, no, we're not going to accept this. Not in our watch. Let's educate our sphere of influence. When you learn and understand what has happened, make sure that the person next to you also understands and are equally as viled, because that's what we should be. We should really be viled by what has happened, I want to also specifically speak out to whom I call the 2040 generation. These are the young people between the ages of 20 and 40. We are our parents that raised us, they deserve to retire into a better Zimbabwe. They deserve to retire into a Zimbabwe where policies are made democratically, not just reliant on how one person feels today. We need to, shall I say, redistribute the chain of power in Zimbabwe. The citizens should be the one in charge. We are the ones that hire and fire the parliamentarians, the legislators. And I think we need to remind them of that. So let us be activated enough to really show that it is us, the citizens, that are in charge. It is us, the citizens, that actually hire and fire the parliamentarians. We hire and fire even the president. And I think it's time that we remind them of this. We need to do it for ourselves, because we are the ones that have been graced with talents and abilities that we desire to serve our country. We desire to reach our maximum actualization in Zimbabwe, and yet we can't do that. And we will never be able to do that if we continue on this trajectory. So we must be activated enough to want to change that. We must do it for our children, because they are the ones that we are raising them into Zimbabwe. We want to raise them into a Zimbabwe where they've got equitable access to opportunities, where we know that the policies are there to protect them and not undermine them and not oppress them. So I think with that, I will come to the end of my 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chenai. And
thank you.
Chenai says that they should not get peaceful sleep. Absolutely. Let's not allow them to get peaceful sleep. And I think that speaks to action in terms of resisting dictatorship. And I'm getting messages that hashtag resist dictatorship is trending at #1. So let's keep talking about our disgust at the unconstitutional constitutional amendments. And at this stage, we are supposed to have a short break, musical break, where we are inviting May Sitole to give us some music. Is May ready?
You know what I'd like to suggest, Justina, in the interest of time, I think May is ready, but I want to ask maybe for May to come right at the end, so that we just get these really powerful voices to come on. We want to do something as well together, on the platform, just in the interest of time. So
Okay.
if you're in agreement, which I can see you nodding your head, I want us to ask Dr. Alex Magaisa to get ready. We're going to ask Miss Nikiwe Ngure to get ready, and also ask Hopewell Chingono to also get ready over the next couple of minutes to give us a few words. So Dr. Alex Magaisa is not a stranger to those of us who have been involved, or those of us who have been listening and watching and following a powerful voice that has taught about constitutionalism. In fact, he was part of the 2013 team that put the constitution together. If you ever watch the documentary, The Democrats, you see Alex Magaisa in that documentary fighting it out with individuals like Paul Mangwana, as he refuses for a constitution to be put together that does not reflect what the people asked for. So I want to ask Dr. Alex Magaisa to come on and quickly, for the next 5 minutes, give us his remarks and give us his solidarity message, and then we'll move on to Ms. Nikiwe Ngure, and then finally we'll my good friend Hopewell Chingono, who will also speak. Dr. Magaisa.
I'm advised Dr. Magaisa is not in yet, and there's a suggestion that we begin with Hopewell Chingono. Okay. And to that list, can you also add Dr. Ibo Mandaza?
Okay, excellent. It gets better, Dr. Ibo Mandaza. It also gets better. So let me ask Hopewell Chingono. Hopewell Chingono is a journalist. Many of you know Hopewell and the amazing work that he has been doing in terms of exposing corruption and motivating youths to become enlightened and to become aware and to become involved with the political process in Zimbabwe. So Hopewell Chingono, I'm going to ask you to come onto the stage and for the next 5 minutes, give us your solidarity message. Thanks, Mkoma Hope.
Well, thank you very much, Ivan. Thank you, Justina, and all protocol observed. Thank you to everyone who is participating in this all-important discussion, the constitutional rally. I think the most important to acknowledge is that at the moment, Zimbabwe has become a crime scene. And by crime scene, I'm referring to all the things that are happening, that are hurting us, that are hurting our communities, and that are hurting our elderly people. Yesterday, I was at the village in Mrewa, and I was discussing this issue of constitution. And the things I would have wanted to discuss today, I sort of changed after that trip to Mrewa. So when I was discussing with the villagers, the one thing that jumped out is that they want dying every day in their homes because they do not have access to medical. We have a situation where, for instance, at Harare Hospital, which is Zimbabwe's biggest hospital, has got only 2 maternity theaters that were built in 1977 by Ian Smith. Only one of them is working at the moment. Yet, land cruisers are being bought daily. We need to go back to rural areas and explain to the rural community, because that's where ZANU-PF gets its vote from, that they do not have access to medication. Their clinics are empty today because ZANU-PF has chosen to buy land cruisers, and that the people in parliament have no ability to stop that because it's not coming through parliament. That is a constitutional breach. That is why the constitution is important, but it's not being adhered to. Youth do not have jobs today. We need to explain to our youth that the jobs would have been here if the ruling party, if ZANU-PF, was following the constitution. ZANU-PF is not following the constitution in terms of creating an environment that is conducive for jobs. I'll give you a good example of what happened in Gaika, where ZANU-PF militia just invaded a mine, Gaika mine, which is a gold mine in the Midlands in Kwekwe. They did so in the name of the president. They did so in the name of the party. And what that does is it makes investors fearful of coming to Zimbabwe. That is because of the constitutional breaches. Gaika went to court. It got a court judgment. That court judgment was being violated by even the state security minister. So the importance of the constitution is not just about the elites talking about constitutionalism. It's about the day-to-day living of citizens. It's about the youths that do not have jobs today, that are smoking weed, that are drinking alcohol, that are taking all sorts of drugs because they have nothing else to do. They are helpless. It's directly linked to the constitution. Then we have a situation where we have potholes. Everyone who has owned a car is paid a price because the suspensions are breaking down every day. But not only those, even those who use homes, the price of commuting has become higher because the cost is passed on to the citizen who's using those combis. How is this linked to the Constitution? The Constitution clearly states how the money is supposed to be used from road levies, how the money from Zinara, from your toll gates, millions of dollars are being collected daily, but the roads are not being fixed because ZANU-PF is violating the Constitution. The money that is meant to fix roads, it's paying for expensive hairstyles, as we saw from the Parliamentary Committee report. That money is being used to buy aeroplanes. We saw that with Zimbabwe Airways. So this is directly linked to the Constitution, and it affects how we commute every day. Then we have low salaries. ZANU-PF just wakes up one day and says the rate is now at 81, and it's fixed there. And because of that, people are earning less. You are told that you're earning more according to the rate that has been set by the government, but you're not. And this is a constitutional issue because the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe should be an independent institution, but it has now been used as a piggy bank. And we must understand that the struggle for our liberation was rooted in the fight to get a better constitution. The crisis that started in 1897 was a crisis of constitutionalism. When the colonials said the black people could not own land, that was a constitutional problem. And that's why people went to war and fought and died. Blood was shed in order to get a good constitution. We got the Lancaster House Constitution, which was a ceasefire document in 1980. In 1987, the constitution was being abused. We got the imperial presidents when Mugabe became president for prime minister. He continued using or abusing those powers, going into the DRC. The crisis that we have today, its seeds are found in those situations like the DRC, where we blew over $1 billion that we didn't have. Again, the constitution was abrogated. The president took the military to the DRC without going to parliament. It's required by the constitution. So because of that abrogation, we find ourselves today in a situation where we can't even borrow money from the World Bank. I urge the youths to go to Google and dig up information on why Zimbabwe cannot borrow money from the World Bank and from the IMF. The World Bank stopped us from borrowing money in 1999. The sanctions mantra, which is used to cover up the corruption, the looting of public funds, and the plundering of the nation's natural resources, only came into being in 2001. The reason why we could not borrow money is because we could not service our loans anymore. When a bank does not give you extra loans because you failed to service the ones that you already have, it's not sanctions, it's just good banking practices. And that was caused by an abrogation of the constitution. So I urge young people, you are the agents of change. As Namatai said, you are in the majority. I urge you to go out in your communities to explain to your mothers, to your fathers, to your grandparents, why the Constitution is important. Do so in a language that they don't understand. Let's not take the elitist debate to the elderly, to the rural areas. Explain to Maya Panganai that today you are forced to sell all the cattle that you have because you don't have the dip to dip your cattle. In the past, in rural areas, people would get dip from government. Now they can't do it because the funds have been looted. Explain to Ambuya Watamzai that she does not have access to medical care today because the COVID fund was looted, and that it was looted, the evidence is there, and that the people are walking the streets, they've been removed from remand. Explain to them in a language that they understand. Explain to them that the journalists who expose this corruption are being locked up using laws that do not exist. And this is a constitutional abrogation. It is important for us to speak to everyone in a language that they understand. I would have wanted to say a lot more, but all of you know that my hands are tied by my bowel conditions. If I go tomorrow, I'll be done. Thank you very much for inviting me, and thank you very much for everyone who has attended. And I would ask you to go back to your communities and keep the discussion going. Let's discuss on social media. Let's take social media to WhatsApp. Let's take WhatsApp into our communities. Thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you so much, my brother Hopewell. Your passion, my brother, your commitment to the cause of a better Zimbabwe is, first of all, commendable, but I think it is infectious as well. A key message you have left with us here today is each of us must take the message to our rural areas, to our grandmothers, our grandfathers, and simplify, explain to them in a language that they understand. And I think that is a powerful, powerful way for the citizenry to get involved in explaining what this constitutional amendment means to us, and especially with the issues that we have stood for time and time again of service delivery, why roads are bad, why we have poor bridges, why there is no, I mean, I can't believe there is no money for DEEP anymore that used to be supplied to those in the rural areas. And so those are things that they would need to understand why those things are no longer there. Thank you so much, Hopewell, for your words. We support you, we are behind you. Thank you for the work that you do. And we only pray and hope that your freedom comes soon. But we also encourage that the fire of the work that you have done and continue to do does not die out, and that you do not die out. Thank you so much, my brother, for being with us today.
Uhopewell uthi yena abasakhulayo kufanele bathathe udaba lolu lwesekelo sombuso baluse emaphandleni lapho kulabo gogo kaSibongile omalume uDumsane, sibazise ukuthi kuyini okwenzakalayo. So abasakhulayo nanku umlando eliwuphiwayo phezu kodaba lolu oluphathelane lokuguqulwa kwesekelo sombuso. Esithi ukudubeka okuningi kwabantu konke kuphathelane lesekelo sombuso.
Let me ask to come onto the stage at this point, Miss Nikiwe Chabalala, to come through and give us a few words of solidarity and just her thoughts on resist dictatorship today. Miss Nikiwe, if you can take the stage.
Thank you and good evening, Zimbabwe. My name is Nikiwe Chabalala. Today, as we talk about our constitution, I want to refer you to page 15 of our constitution, which is the preamble. It starts by very beautiful words, "We the people of Zimbabwe." So today I say to you, we the people of Zimbabwe who are gathered here today, we have work to do. Like that old man prophesied, we have work to do. We have cleanup work of our constitution to do today. Our constitution is being mutilated without even trying some of the clauses. Top of the running mate, it has not even been tried out, but it's being mutilated. And the very principles of how a constitution is created by the people and for the people of Zimbabwe are being undermined right in front of our eyes. Be it a professional, be whoever you are, it affects you and me, the future of Zimbabwe. So what do? We need to understand what is happening in our constitution. What does it mean to each and every one of us? And we need to understand the power that we have as citizens, as women who actually constitute the greater majority of our population today. We need to understand what can we do, what are the peaceful means that we can actually engage in actually challenging what has actually happened in our constitution. The work starts from now and today. Say no to constitutional exclusion, saying no to undermining the will of the people and the supremacy of the constitution. Our civil servants owe us transparency and accountability. Let that not be taken away by the chosen few. Thank you so much. All the best, Zimbabwe.
Isu vana vemuZimbabwe, tina usapo lweZimbabwe. We, the people of Zimbabwe, we need to stand up and resist dictatorship. At this stage, allow me to introduce a household name, my brother, Dr. Ibo Mandaza.
Thank you very much, my dear sister. Mine is very brief. Firstly, it's just to acknowledge this very important event, and in doing so, to thank you, Justina, Ivan, and all those who have made this possible. It's amazing. It's historic. It's groundbreaking. And therefore, we, the older generation, we're really onlookers. And ours is simply to give solidarity to a major step in the fight against autocracy. I say so also because not only of my age, but also because I was part of the first round of post-independence. I never dreamt that it would come to this. And therefore, I say so with humility, that you can only support. You cannot interfere in a struggle that really can only move forward on the back of the young people, those who are feeling the pinch most. And therefore, on behalf of SAPIS and the platform of concerned citizens, just to say thank you, this is fantastic. Secondly, is to say the following. The amendments, the Constitution, the blatant assault on the Constitution, the persistent assault on democracy, the recall of elected MPs who were voted into Parliament by more than 1 million plus people. It can be no better example of an assault on democracy. The extent to which the Constitution is being torn up in front of us. All this and more raises the dilemma, which I want to just outline briefly. On the one hand, it highlights the reality of the nature of the state that is before us. A coup government, a government which is disdainful of constitutionalism, which is not constitutional, a government which does not regard the rule of law, a government without an accountable executive, without a vibrant legislature, if also because the legislature has been torn apart, decimated, and a state in which does not have an independent judiciary. It's a dangerous situation. And therefore, the amendments that you are talking about, the rapid decline into autocracy is a reflection of the nature of the state that we have. This state is not only impervious to reform, it is unable, there's no capacity to reform. As was said some years ago, it cannot reform without reforming itself out of power. That's the reality. So, regrettably, the amendments will go through. There'll be more amendments. The election that everybody is becoming very excited about will be predictable, violent, perhaps even more violent than before. And the result was the same. The election, like all the last few elections since 2000, have the effect of legitimizing an illegitimate dispensation. But we have to stand back and ask ourselves, what do we do? Do we relentlessly repeat history, go into an election in which we know the outcome 2 years in advance? Or do we reorganize? Do we sit down and reorganize ourselves? It is important. It is not enough to state that which we don't want. And the statement is very clear. We know what we don't want. It is more important to not only to state what we want, but also to state how we get where we want to get to. That is a challenge. I have no answers. I hope that as part of these deliberations, as part of this interaction, that we will consider how to traverse the journey ahead. It's a difficult road, the most difficult road. Ours was very easy to fight colonialism. We thought it was very difficult. I can't think of anything more difficult than that which faces us today. I thank you, and again, thank you very much for this very fantastic initiative. However limited in scope, however limited in the capacity to move it forward, I believe you have done a fantastic thing, and we must acknowledge that. Thank you very much.
Wow. You know, Dr. Ibo Mandaza, the respect I have for you today is based on a statement you've just said. You said that I speak with humility into a struggle that is on the backs of young people. And you do so as someone who participated in the struggle for independence for Zimbabwe. And I want to thank you for taking that position where you said, look, we fought a certain struggle, and now we recognize that there is a new generation that must rise to the occasion. You spend a lot of time and resources mobilizing young people and different people for the struggle for Zimbabwe. And I want to thank you for being with us today and for continuing to help us to understand some of the roots of the issues and the problems that we have, because some of these things began when some of us were not even born. So thank you so much for that, Dr. Mandaza. We appreciate you being with us here today. As we
there is a video recording from Dr. Alex Magaisa.
Okay, good. If that is there, why don't we go ahead and let's listen to the video recording from Dr. Magaisa.
And for the Constitution of Zimbabwe, the Senate voted in favor of an amendment to the Constitution. And this is the second amendment within the space of a month. Constitutional Amendment number 1, which was passed by the Senate again a few weeks ago on the 6th of April 2021, was a disaster for the Constitution because it was illegal. It was illegal because the Senate was essentially voting on the basis of a non-existent bill. The arguments regarding the illegality of Constitutional Amendment number 1 have been presented in so many ways, and I believe that there are a number of court challenges that have been presented to show that Amendment number 1 was not only illegal, but also illegitimate. But over the last few weeks, and indeed this week, we have seen Constitutional Amendment number 2 being brought up again in Parliament and being passed by the Senate, again containing provisions which are illegal causing illegitimacy insofar as the Constitution is concerned. My view is that these are highly retrogressive steps. The amendments represent a streak of reactionary politics in our country, where the gains that were won in the 2013 constitutional process, the process that led to the current constitution, are being eroded. And this erosion is taking place not only because ZANU-PF is supporting it, but also because it is being aided and abated by a controlled opposition in the form of the MDCT, which is led by Senator Douglas Monzora. And the notion that this is being done as a legacy of the late, great Morgan Tsvangirai itself is a huge insult to his memory. The reasons why these amendments are retrogressive is not
one voice I still remember from the head of state and government. The simple voice, the voice of the people is the voice of God. Then what happened? Betrayal of trust is a disease that has become the political pride and by many Zimbabwean politicians, parliamentarians, and senators. Their loyalty to the electorate goes on a holiday soon after they are elected and voted into power. They appease their political chief whips in the expense of the hopeful critical masses of Zimbabwe. Yes, a strangely schizophrenic experience. Today we have amended the supreme law of the land. What a deadly blow to the culture of constitutionalism and the constitutionality of our country. We have reversed back the gains, back to square one, or zero perhaps. Palahwe, my son, we are back to square one, perhaps square zero. Who shall restore the legacy this time around? Constitutional Amendment Bill number 2 is a deliberate castration of the people's pool of hopes, pool of dreams. Yes, once again, we have baptized ourselves from top the parliament, from top the cabinet, from top the government. We have baptized ourselves to the miscarriage of justice, miscarriage of loyalty, miscarriage of trust. Dear 191 to 22 members of parliament, 2/3 majority who have amputated the people's constitution into a dictatorial tool for a military state, for a one-party state whose religion is a dictatorship. Why do parliamentarians exhibit this of a yo-yo? 65 to 10 members of Senate, the 2/3 majority whose wisdom has mutated into a weapon of mass destruction, a weapon of constitutional monopoly away from the meeting crowd. Why do you senators exhibit the chameleonic tendencies of changing color? They are politically flowered suffering from cash tropism. Our MPs and senators have decided to reverse the gains. We are back to square one. Abakhokeli sebevuka ubhekenyani. Abakhokeli bathi sesinuka njengembuzi sebevuka amazimu. Izitelemark, the scorpions that sting and poison the people's dreams. Balahwe, my son. Bakithi mina ngingusukuza ukuthi makababa. Dear President, dear government, dear Parliament, if you have chosen to dump the people, take care for sin. Why engage in an Ian Douglas Smithish tendency to thinking, clandestinely stampeding to reverse the people's voices, nicodemously scattering to scavenge on people's hopes and aspirations? The Iscariotic kleptocracy is of a scandalous grave. Indeed, our leaders in the Parliament and Senate, you have buried us alive. You have abused your authority. But I know, oh yes, I know, the people of Zimbabwe shall rise again. But one day, Samanda for sure, to resist this thinking and misrepresentation by hypocritical politicians who change the color with the cash and the power. Yes, sebakubeka bonke balikhohlwa igama umdlewandlewani inkosi phezulu eyatshola khona. Our leaders have decided to bury us alive. Palahwe, Palahwe, my son, the people shall resist the dictatorship. The dictatorship constitution shall be resisted. The voice of the people is the voice of God, man. No one can resist. No one can resist the voice of the people. No one can sit on the little boiling pot forever. Once again, align, don't amend. Massacres, mass action, mass destruction, mass prayer, mass bombardment, poverty, politics, prostitution, propaganda, hunger, hatred, humiliation, shortages, shootings, shortcomings, shit, siasha, robots, layers and guitars, my son!
Uyachisa umoyoxide. Uyachisa umoyoxide. Utena resist dictatorship. Siqhubekela phambili ke khathesi. Sisakhula sasimuzwa eshaya ingoma. Besikhangelela ukuthi uzaqala nguye. Kwabachiridza mimanzi. Vapinda vati joina ndimukoma Dr. Thomas Mapfumo. Tiri kuda kuvapa kanguva kuti vataure nesu tisati taenda kuna Dzikamaibera.
Thank you.
Okay. Hello.
We can hear you. Kukuzwa itaurai zvenyu mukoma.
Muri kutaura nenyaya yeconstitution.
Hongu mukoma Thomas, inyaya yeconstitution yaakuda kubvarurwa.
Ndifunge kuti kwatiri kutangira kwacho, in the first place hamuna government kaimi. Hakuna government, not government iripo yakakundwa na-MGC yatsvangirai. Saka havasi legitimate hai. Vakakundwa havasi suppose kunge vachitonga kwete. Tarisai kusafa kwaita vanhu vasafa for the last 40 years, vanhu vachisafa. Ndekupi kwamakamboona nyika inoita vanhu vanodzvinyirirwa for 40 years, not akupinda 41 years. Kuda kuchinja constitution, kuda kuti varambe varipo vachidzinyirira vanhu sezvavari kuita iye zvinezvi. Haisi development kakuchinja constitution, ndio development here. Iye zvinezvi nyika yapaipi nezvamuri kutaura zvakasiyana. Nyika yachoboka zvekuchoboka zviya zviya, and ava vanhu havachiri ngorimo mupower. Imenowo vanhu hamusi kusimuka muchitaura sematauriro atiri kuita kuti zvakaipa zviri kuitika munyika. Ava vanhu havafanirwe kuonekwa vachinge varipo mupower. Ngavabve mupower ndokuti nyika yenyu isununguke. Haisununguke kana ava vanhu varipo, because muri kudhira nemacriminals, nemacrooks, nemhondi. Saka nyika yembofa yakabudirira. Mbavha wakanyanyisa munyika. Nchidzwe kana aba abatwe anongoti catch and release. Hazvisiri izvo, munhu anenge aine mhosva ngaaende kujeri. Haikona kuti vasina mhosva vaya vari kutaura kuiwa uori hazvinhu zvakaipa izvi zvatiri kuita munyika. Ndo vamunoregera, ndo vamunobata muvaendesa kujeri. Ava vari kubava hamuvabati. Haisiro matongerwo anoitwa nyika ayo. Nyika haitongwe ichidaro. Haisiri inosarudza opposition party kuti aiwa inimi handidi kuti muite opposition party, ndoda uyu kuti aite opposition party, nokuti ndo wako iwe wawasarudza kuti anoda kubatsira kuita zvauri kuita. Hazvisiri izvo, nyika haitongwe ichidaro. Saka handione inini constitution yenyu haishande kana mukataura nezveconstitution. Constitution ingachinjwe. Ko vanhu ava vari kuramba varipo vari kuiteiko pachigaro. Nyika yenyu yachoboka zvokuti zvakutonyadzisa kana kuno kwatiri kuti utaure kuti unobva kuZimbabwe. Isisu vamwe tine chivindi tinotaura kuti ndokumusha kwako. Vamwe vakutonyara kuti vataure kuti vanobva kuZimbabwe nenzira yemaitiro amuri kuita ikoko. Hazvisi zvinonyadzisa. Tarisa zvinoitwa kuno kuna naAmerica. Kana yave nhamo vanoungana semaAmericans vokanganwa zvemabati voita zvinhu. Constitution ndeyevanhu. Vanhu ndo vanoti constitution yakanaka, haisarudzwe nepati kana anybody. Constitution ndevanhu. Vanhu ndo vanoita kuti constitution vati iyi constitution ndeyedu, zvekutaurwa neconstitution ndo zvatinoda. Zvido zvevanhu ndo constitution. Hakuna constitution inofosoredzwa pavanhu. Hakuna zvinhu zvakambodaro muupenyu huno. Muri kudhira nemacriminals nemacrooks. musazombozvi muchapedza dzimwe futi another 100 years inavo vanhu vachikukakatai makakatirosa vakagundwa natsvangirai vakatsvaga mudhara wenyaya aripo akamhanya kunotsvaga kavhesi kekuti hamuna kunyatsokuda chii chinonzi hauna kunyatsokunda hosi chairo rinogona kuwina nechirebvu kurescos wakundwa kana ukakundwa nehalf emark watokundwa chinonzi hamuna kunyatsotikunda chii munganditaurirewo kuti zvinorevei kuti hamuna kunyatsotikunda hakuna zvinhu zvakadaro constitution yenyu haisenze vanhu ngavabude mudzimba vabvise uwoyu vabvise tsvina iripo mumbofa makaenda mberi nevanhu havana chido chevanhu pamwoyo havaziye chinonzi vanhu chii aiwa chavo ndechekuti vaone kuti homwe dzavo dzazara nekuba kwavari kuita ikoko saka hazvifambi hapana chinombofamba iye zvinezvi vari bhizi pakudistroya chamisa uri kuda kumudistroya kuti aite sei nekuti ari kuramba zvamuri kuda kuita imimi chamisa ari kuda kuita zvinoita zvinodiwa nevanhu just because anoda kuita izvozvo aiwa munhu uyo akaipa hafanirwe kuonekwa achikontesta makuda kuchinja zvemakore kuti hanzi kana munhu achida kuita nhingi president anotoita apfuura makore 50 makamboona kana munhu akaita even 25 years 17 years anogona kutonga nyika because amurume mukuru zvamuri kuita uko paumbwe and youth irikoko yakaora zvekuora zviya haifanirwe kuona kuregera zvinhu zvisvika pazvasvikapo ngavaite vanhu vabude mudzimba varambe zvimatakanyanya vanofanirwa kuramba udzvinyiriri uhu this government haisi legitimate never igovernment yakakundwa vari kutonga nechisimba saka havasi vanhu vevanhu aiwa musamutombofa makanyeperana zvenyu takavasapota isu tikavaimbira vari kunana mozambique vachiita zvinhu nezvinezvi ndiri kugara kuga ndiri kugara kuno ndakatiza vanhu ivavo vanhu vandaisapota dai ndakaramba ndichivasapota nhasi ndingadai ndine dzimotikari ndingadai ndine mafamu ndichibira vanhu saka haisiriyo type yangu aiwa handine chinhu handidi chinhu chemunhu pandakazvarwa ndakauya ndiri ndega ndisina kana hembe kana chii ndichadzokera futi ndisina kana chii saka ngatizongororei zvinhu zvakadaro vana vari kushupika vana vasi kuenda kuzvikoro vana vari kungoita basa rekutengesa mumastreet zvinonyadzisa zvikuru ende zvinosiririsa zviri kuitika kumba uku zvinonyadzisa mufunge handifunge kuti zvinhu zvakanaka kana makazviona muchizviona imimi ndinokumbirisai rwisai udzvinyiriri huripo bvisai udzvinyiriri huripo ndokuti nyika inake nyika yambofa yakanaka kana vanhu havaripo sanyeperana ndaitonzwa zvenyu vamwanhu nguva yamakabvisa mugabe yemunatisvitsa patasvikapo vanhu vachiti idipfe muri kumukanganwa here kuti uyu munhu ndiye aisaenzana mugabe kumuti idipfe hamuzive here munhu munorwara here vakufunga ka ega kuraika kujaira nhamo hakuna kujaira nhamo kujairira nhamo
aiwa mashoko
kubatana kwevanhu vanhu voita chinhu chimwe chete yezvinezvi vanhu vangopesaniswa kunoku kumadiaspora tiri kugara ndofunga kune 7 million vanhu vakabuda munyika hazvisati zvamboonekwa pasi rino rese kuti vanhu 7 million vanobuda munyika kuchiza munyika chimwe chinoshamisa kuti tasvika 41 years tichingorwisana neudzvinyiriri nhamo yedu haiperi kwete iyi nhamo pamusoro peimwe nhamo saka handione tichienderera mberi kutaura nezveconstitution hatitaure nezvegovernment first tisataure nezveconstitution are these people supposed to be there today? They are not supposed to be there. vanhu vakakundwa natsvangirai akaitawo zvechirema kupedzisira ajoinana nezvegovernment of national unity isina kumbatsira kana horo, asi uriwo wakunda wakupisa kuenda kubotswana instead kuti aiwa munhu uyu ndamukunda, wotaurirawo nyika dzimwe dziri kure, vana America, vana England, vanati uyu munhu ndamukunda, akuramba kubva pachigaba. Inga Mugabe pachezvake akanga atotaurira vanhu ibvai maoffices takundwa, uyu akamhanya because aiziva kuti Mugabe achembera, zvaachembera ndichamutorera simba because aisenzana naChiwenga ndiye akanga ari wearmy, saka haana kupusa, ari kukurudzira zvinhu zvake, hapana chinhu chinogofha chakachinjapo izanu kare.
Dr. Mapfumo,
zanu bato rakaipisisa zvikuru munyika menyu, zanu gaipawa nokuti zvinhu zvese zvinake zvatiri kutaura
Mukanya
constitution yacho yezanu ndo constitution, hapana constitution apa.
Mukanya murundinzwa here?
Ngationei kuti tabvisa vanhu ava vasaonekwa mupawa.
Mukanya kana muchitaura nevechidiki, nekuti mimi mabva kure nenyaya yerusununguko rweZimbabwe, makaimba dzimbo kare corruption, vanhu vasati vatomboona kuti corruption chii, matoimba kare kuti corruption yauraya nyika, iri kutouraya kumberi uku, muchivhara muchipedzisa. Vechidiki mungavati kudii? Mashoko amungavasiyira vechidiki nemuchidimbo kuti aiwa, inini saDr. Mapfumo semunhu akaimba, akasapota, akarwa chimurenga, vechidiki ndinoda kuti mudai zvinhu zviviri kana zvitatu tobva tapedza. Tinotenda
ngavasubuke, vechidiki vasubuke, vabude mudzimba, vataurire vanhu, vabude mudzimba, vatatanise hurumende iripo iyi. Basa revechidiki, isusu patavo tiri vadiki nguva yana Smith taikanda matombo tichirwisana nevanhu vane pfuti, vasatye kuti hanzi tinourayiwa. Aiwa, hapana freedom inouya on a silver plate. Freedom inotouya nekurwisana, panotofiwa ropa rinotodeuka kana muchida kuva free. Musazvinyepere kuti hanzi tichaiwana Mwari achapindira. Anopindira. Muri kukanganwa kuti 6 million maJews akaurayiwa nemaGermans. Mwari akanga ari akadii kupindira ipapo? 6 million vatiurayiwa. Musazikanganwa, imimi mayouth, imimi budai, ndimi madzosera zvinhu pasi. Hamusi kugona basa renyu kwete. Itai basa sebasa, upenyu ndohwenyu hwemangwana uhu. Isu takura tinoenda mukasara makadai, muchasara musina nyika, muchasara musina chamuinacho, mukatadza kuzvirwira, muchasara musina, munofa muri marombe, munenge matadza kuzvisunungura. Saka ndinokukumbirisai vechidiki kuti simukai muzvisunungure. Ndatenda.
Ameno, kana manga makateerera Dr. Thomas Mapfumo, munhu asingangotauri mashoko chete, asi munhu agara nenyaya dzematongerwo enyika, nenyaya dzekusunungura vanhu. This is a man who has been on the journey of speaking truth to power, a man who has been on the journey of challenging the wrong in our society for many, many, many years. Well over 40 years now, as old as our country is, he has been in the trenches fighting. Dr. Mapfumo, we want to thank you so much for being with us here today as we resist dictatorship, as we resist the destruction of our constitution, and thank you for the word that you have given to our young people. I want to invite very quickly onto the stage now to come and to give us the call to action, Dzikamai Bere of Zim Rights, who are the conveners of the rally today, and he's going to give us the call to action and give a few words to that before we start to round up. I've got Sipho Malunga that is waiting in the wings as soon as Dzikamai is done, and then we will bring this to a close with some powerful actions together that we shall do as citizens, as civic society, as politicians, as the young, as women, as men, together. So, Zikamai, thank you so much, my brother, first and foremost, for taking the mammoth task of uniting people around this cause today of resist dictatorship. Speak to us in a few minutes and lead us into the call to action.
Thank you, Pastor E. I want to believe I am audible.
You surely are.
Thank you. Right, so this is the final act of the day before we take the action. Today is a historic day. Thousands of Zimbabweans are following online, and hundreds are here with us today. I do not want to waste your time, but I want to go right into the heart of the matter. It is important that as we close this meeting, we do an action together that is going to signal our commitment to resist dictatorship. So I am going to go through the brief petition that we have compiled as the coalition that is bringing together the citizens, which I'm going to invite you to plug into. It's very short, precise, and straight to the point. And as soon as I finish reading the petition, the link will be on the chat box, and I will invite you to pick it from there and send it to the world. Dear President Emerson Mnangagwa, dear Speaker of Parliament and President of the Senate, dear Chief Justice Luke Malaf, we, the people of Zimbabwe, have watched with utter disbelief the ongoing mutilation of the Constitution of Zimbabwe by you, our leaders, who have pledged to defend the Constitution. The passage of the Constitution of Zimbabwe, Amendment Bill number 2 in the National Assembly, in the upper house and the lower house, represents an arrogant attack on our democracy by the government. The politicking that is fueling these amendments is a subversion of the will of the people. If you are truly listening, leaders, you should have heard the clear voice of the people of Zimbabwe that we do not need these amendments. This was clear in the public consultations that Parliament documented. Our hope is that as leaders in power, you would do the right thing and listen to the voice of reason, which is the voice that is raised by the people. Amendment number 2 bill is an attack on our young and fragile democracy. By removing Parliament's oversight powers, the amendment has violated the principle of separation of powers, as well as the tenets of transparency and accountability. By giving the president power to appoint judges of superior courts without public scrutiny and extending the tenure of the judges, the amendments are facilitating the capture of our judiciary by the executive. These, among many other evils of this amendment bill, have been made very clear to the government during public hearings, as well as in various position papers shared with Parliament and in the public domain. We, the people of Zimbabwe, therefore demand the following. 1, that the president withholds his assent from the bill because it violates the principle of separation of powers and creates conditions of autocracy in Zimbabwe. Explicitly, the bill is a deviation from the founding values of the Constitution. Number 2, that the Chief Justice shows leadership and desists from any thought of holding on to office after the expiration of his term of office on 15 May 2021. And that the Chief Justice leads the judiciary to push back on anti-democratic and unconstitutional practices in both the process and substance of amendments to the Constitution, and as when such challenges are brought before the courts. Number 3, that the Speaker of Parliament shows leadership by realizing and admitting to the illegalities in the process of passing the amendment bill, that he leads the Parliament reflect on its anti-people vote in favor of the bill and that he advises the president not to assent to the bill. These are the 3 clear demands. Now, I'm going to put in the chat right now the petition that I've just read. And if you agree with that petition, I am going to invite you to pick the petition from the chat and make it viral. So I'm putting the petition in the chat, and I'm sure everyone has seen that petition. Can you take a moment to just copy that petition and put it on your social media, on your WhatsApp groups, on your friends, and make it viral, and make it very clear that those 3 clear demands are the people's demands. And as we close this meeting, please continue to share this petition so that if the government decides to go ahead with the amendments, they must know that they will face resistance from the people of Zimbabwe. Thank you. Over back to you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Zikamai, for that call to action. And we appeal to everyone to go onto the chat, copy the link to the petition, and let's make it viral. And I think we also had the advice that we had earlier on. Let's also take these messages outside of our social media platforms, out of WhatsApp. Let's take them to our villages. Mbuya va hector vazinzwe, ugogo kadumi akuzwe, umalume uDumsani akuzwe laye, abekwazi ukuthi kuyini okwenzakalayo elizweni lakibo. At this stage, I am also now going to give room to umnewethu uSipho Malunga, who is going to give us a closing word on this constitutional rally. Sipho Sami Malunga.
Thank you so much. See. The organizers.
Something is wrong with your
thank
network,
you,
my brother.
and thank. Okay, can you hear me now?
Now it's much better.
Much better now.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you so much. I was saying thank you, Pastor. Thank you, Z. Thank you, Sister Jesse, and thank you all the speakers who spoke before being invited. And I'm speaking at the end. I thought I would speak somewhere in between, and I would also add my own anger. I'm really upset. I know many people think I'm always angry about everything, which I am, because I look at how far we've come. I'm a child of the struggle, literally, and I always remind people that the country started sliding down many years ago, and Dr. Mapfumo talked about 40 years of struggle, and the same people continuing to subvert the will of the people. This is not the first time our country has slid, and we were told in 2017 that the problem was Mugabe. We were told that it was Mugabe, and Mugabe had been given too much power in 1987 in the constitutional change. But Mugabe is gone. It's gone. And what do we have now? Where are we going now with Mugabe gone? We were told Mugabe became such a big, powerful person and nobody could challenge him. We were told that Mugabe and his wife and Kasevia Kasukuwerere and Jonathan were the problem. There were criminals around the president and they had taken over everything. People were afraid. The current president even ran away from Mugabe because he didn't trust him. He didn't trust that he would be safe. He didn't trust that the constitution would be followed. He didn't trust that if there was anything against him, he would go through the courts and the courts would be allowed to deal with his case. He was afraid that Mugabe would kill him because he felt that Mugabe had become this one powerful, dictatorial, authoritarian leader. Why are we where we are now? We have a serious problem. It means that they have tried everything from grabbing power from Mugabe to now consolidating and changing the constitution so that they consolidate themselves so that they never, ever, ever, ever leave power. This is unacceptable, completely unacceptable. And I associate myself with what Thomas Mapfumo said. Nobody is coming to save you. Nobody is coming to save us Zimbabweans. Nobody is coming to save you. So even as we speak now, the ruling party, the regime will keep telling you it's the Americans. The Americans are funding this. The donors are funding this. Yes, it's an excuse that they are looking for. They get money from the Chinese. They get money from Dubai. They get money from everywhere else. But I will tell you this as I live. You are not the first people, you are not the first country to be in this situation. You are not the first country to confront authoritarianism, to confront corruption. Other people around the world have confronted the same, and they have not waited for anybody from outside. I will tell you now, in Algeria in 2010 and 2012, the people rose up against corruption. In Kyrgyzstan in 2005, they rose up against corruption and authoritarianism. That's a tulip revolution. It resulted in a change of government. President Akayev had to leave. In Egypt in 2011, the people rose up against authoritarianism. They rose up against corruption. President Mubarak had to leave. In Jordan, there were protests against corruption and authoritarianism in 2011. In Morocco, 2011, 2012. Syria is in the middle of a civil war because of corruption and authoritarianism. The people rose up. They said, no more, we're not willing, we're not accepting it. In Tunisia, the same thing happened. In the end, President Ben Ali had to leave. This is 2010. In Yemen in 2010, the people rose up. Yemen is engulfed in a civil war. In Egypt, same thing. In Burkina Faso, the same thing. In Sudan, the same thing. Everywhere where you go, when people are oppressed, they rise up. You can cry, you can complain, you can be afraid, but ultimately, the truth of the matter is freedom is not free. It's not free. We know that. It's fascinating that the word itself tells you that it says freedom, but it is not free. It comes at a cost. It always comes at a cost. And somebody's got to pay the cost. And the people that are putting you down will not pay that cost until you decide that this is enough. And as we say that at the end of the day, some are saying we're waiting for 2023, some are saying, well, maybe the courts will work. They are closing each and every space. They have closed it. This was the last nail. And I believe, and I hope and I believe that as they think this is the last nail, it is the beginning of the resistance. It should be the beginning of the resistance. If there's anything that might bring everyone together, whether you are MDC or ZANU-PF or ZAPU or MRP or whoever you are, Black, Shona, Ndebele, English, religious, Muslim, Christian, the Constitution is the one document, the one supreme law that protects everyone, that protects the powerful and the strong, that protects women and men. And I say this, and I say this, and I say this many times, that nobody is going to bring people together. People will have to come together on their own. And if this government knows what is good for it, it must stop any attempt to change this constitution. Because even some of us who just talk on Twitter, we're going to stop talking just on Twitter. And we hope that everybody is going to stand up and stop this. Govern, campaign, win the hearts of people, do other things, but do not mess with our constitution. Thank you very much.
Whoa, my brother Siposami, I cannot think of better words and better encouragement today concerning resist dictatorship. You have spoken with passion. You have given a clear and a clarion call to a generation of people. You have spoken the truth as it is, that this is the way things are, and these are the options that we have. And I want to ask that everyone who has been here with us, who has heard, especially the words of Siposami as we have closed, who have heard the words of Dr. Ibo Mandaza, who have heard the words of Maita Kaedza, who's in Mashingo, who have heard the words of Miss Anure Shabalala, who was in Matebeleland, the young lady in Lupane, everyone who has spoken here today, and I mean such powerful words. No one is coming to save us. We are the people that we have been waiting for. It's going to take everybody. It's going to take all of us taking this message where it needs to go for action to happen. If you haven't yet signed the petition today, I want to ask you to do that. Sign that petition. Post it on social media platforms, on Facebook, post it onto Twitter, so that other people can pick it up and they can sign that petition, so that it can never be said of us that we did nothing. But this is the first of these steps. There are many steps that are coming as we continue to resist dictatorship, as we continue to say atisi kuda ujanyirira, atisi kuda umbimbi ndoga pakutonga nyika yedu. My sister Justina.
Pastor E, I have grown to hear the statement that watentum fazi watentim bobodo. But today, I think from what I heard from everyone who came up to speak, watinte segelo sombuso, watentim bobodo. Kubata chete, bumbiro redu remtemo, wabba watsamwisa munhu wese. Jisai maoko enyu akashiba pabumbiro redu remtemo.
Munga anzi marova constitution marova van. That's basically it. So, ladies and gentlemen, here we are today as we are coming now to the end of the first step. This is the beginning as people rise up to say no. Mark our words, it shall be said, Zakatanga pa Twitter, Zakatanga pa Zoom. But we want to now begin a journey that has got no reverse, a journey that we cannot back out of, a journey that has got no return ticket. This is not a round trip. It's one way. It's one way. Ruendo rwataka kufamba risu ruendo rwekuti tichadzoka, ruendo rwekuti taakuenda kunosvika kwatinofanira kusvika, atidzoke paruendo rwataka kuenda. So I want to thank you so much. Yes, ma'am.
Pastor E, ndiri kuda kuti nini kuvatungamiri, zvikuru kumutungamiri wenyika, vanozvitivo vanoteerera vanhu. Teererai zviri kutaurwa pamusoro pebumbiro remutemo. Regai kuisa rupau rwenyu pagwaro iro rekusandura bumbiro remutemo. Ungaze wafaka upau lwako konke khonokho okulandelane lokuthi isekelo sombuso siguqulwe, ngoba lo ibandla kucela sikhuluma sisithi thina njengosapho lweZimbabwe, isu sebantu bemuZimbabwe, we the people of Zimbabwe do not want anyone to be meddling with our constitution.
Maisitole, if you're with us, you're going to close out with the song House of Stone. House of Stone, Imbaye Mabwe in Shona. So Maisitole, if you're there, I want you to get ready to do that and to close us out with this song. And as you do so, I want to thank every one of you, each and every one of you. tinoda kukusimudzirai nekukusimbisai kuti maita zvenyu, maita basa, matanga kurwendo rwekurwisa. Ndinotenda. My sister Justina, if you can just thank Ndebele.
Siyabonga kakhulu lonke elibuye ukuthi sizokuba sonke kurally yona leyi esekelo sombuso. Siyalibonga, akuqalanga namhla kuphela namhla, sithe kuqale namhla, kuzaqhubekela phambili, sikhangela ezinye indlela esizatshengisa ngazo ukuthi asifuni oyabamba isisekelo sethu sombuso.
Mesitole, House of Soul.
Something that we need every day. Love is what keeps us going, together with hope and with faith. And this song really is to encourage all of us to know that even though we go through hardships, we're able to rise from the ashes. We're able to rise from our pain, and we're able to rise from the circumstances that limit us when we have faith and when we hope and we join hands with those around us to bring good into the world. This is House of Stone.
You made us a promise that we would be free. My son gave his life for a world I have not seen. You broke every word you spoke. So now where are we? We're waiting for a vision that one day we will be free. Yeah, yeah. Freedom, breaking through the ceiling, finally believing that freedom, freedom. We can see the sunrise, travel out to bed, Simuka. This house of stone will rise. Hey, 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 oh, hey, yeah, yeah, yeah. We are together, and we will rise from the ashes. We'll stand as one for freedom, breaking through the ceilings, finally believing freedom. We can see the sunrise, travel out to bed, Simuka. This house of stone. This house of stone. This house of stone. We rise. This house of stone. We will rise together. We will rise. We will rise. This house of stone. We'll
Thank you so much, May Sitole, and what a powerful, powerful song she is in Cape Town, South Africa. We've had such a wonderful moment here today. My sister Justina, I am thrilled. I did not imagine it would turn out the way it did today. What we've had inspiration, we've had instruction, we've had collaboration, we've had vision. I mean, all of these things that we've had today. And we want to thank you. Thank you to the different organizations that have had a hand in putting this event, this rally together. I know Zimrights has been at the center of it, but there's many that have been part of it today. And I want to thank you for that. Thank you to our brother Zikamaibere, who is pretty much at the center of making sure that this would happen. My sister Justina Mukoko, you are an iconic individual. Having suffered so much in our nation, you continue to stand, to speak truth to power. You lead the Zimbabwe Peace Project. Thank you for co-hosting with me today. Thank you for leading, for making sure that we deliver the message and that we rally our people. Over to you, Justina, to close today.
Allow me to also thank the technical teams of the organizations that put this together. Zimrights, Zimbabwe Peace Project, the Zimbabwe Human Rights NGO Forum, and We Lead. Colleagues, you made us proud. I know we were putting pressure on you, but we pulled it off. I think I was really moved by the anger that I saw in the panelists. I think it's going to get us somewhere. Thank you and good night.
Thank you and good night, everybody. You keep well. Bye-bye.
Africa, freedom's coming. Africa, freedom's coming, come. Africa, freedom is coming. Africa, Zimbabwe, Zimbabwe, Zimbabwe. Ndavererwa ishe izwani tandazo yedu tanetseka ishe izwani tandazo yedu tanetseka ishe izwani tandazo yedu tapelelwa. Zimbabwe, Zimbabwe, Zimbabwe.